Welcome to Sit Down. I am your host, Alex Lane-Kieltyka, and welcome to episode 1 of my brand new podcast. This has been something I've been wanting to do for quite a while now, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to doing as well. I've actually used to do a podcast with the same name called Sit Down as well, that is on the YouTube channel that this will be uploaded to, as well as iTunes, as well as Podbean as well, and possibly SoundCloud in the future. Want to try and get this podcast out there to as many people as I can possible. Sorry, just clearing my throat there. I have to remember to bring a beverage with me next time when I make a podcast, because this could screw me over otherwise. So yeah, I used to do a podcast before. It was always based around wrestling, because wrestling is something I'm very fond of. It's something I have a lot of knowledge about, even for my age of 18. So there's another bit of information. This introduction is going to be an introduction not only to the podcast, but to me as well. So you guys can get to know me, we can get to know the podcast, you can get to know what I'm about. So, like I said, my name's Alex, and I will be hosting this podcast, well, hopefully forever. That's the plan anyway. So currently I am actually taking a year out. I was finishing my A-levels last year. I studied English literature, sociology and drama. I did okay, got what I needed sort of thing, and I will be going off to university next year, or in September anyway. By the way, this is being recorded on March the 28th, that was wrong, wasn't it? March the 28th, 2019. So anything that I reference whenever I say today or on this day or anything like that, I mean March the 28th, even though this podcast probably won't be coming out until tomorrow, which will be the 29th. So if I repeat any previous information from the day before you guys are listening, then that's exactly why. So I used to do a podcast last year when I was studying my A-levels, mainly because I had a lot more time on my hands, even though I had a lot of homework and coursework, etc. I was obviously in college for a lot less time than I am at work. I do not, I'm out of the house for like 10 hours a day, kind of thing. I'm currently doing a year out as a sales admin, as a sales administrator for a company. I've spent the past, I believe it's, how long has it been now? 6 months? No, probably more than that, probably 7 months now with the company I'm currently at. I started in August. I can't even think about how many months it's been now, actually. If that was the 8th month, 4 plus 3, 7 months I've now spent with the company. Actually, 7 months today. I started with working full time. I've enjoyed my time. I've learned a lot, got a lot more experience, and I'm ready to go for university next year. The good thing is about taking a year out is it does make you look forward more to not being in work anymore. So I can now understand when adults say, don't grow up too quickly. Please don't, guys. Do not grow up too quickly. It'll get to you otherwise. So yeah. So this podcast, like I said, in the old podcast I used to do a lot of wrestling topics. It was always based around wrestling, sometimes a bit of football as well. But in this podcast, I'll actually be talking about many different things. I'll be talking about the world in general. If you're on the YouTube channel, you can see in the bio that I want you guys to join me, interact with me, discuss with me the things going on in the news right now. There will be sport and sometimes a wrestling episode as well, just to talk about the ongoing things in the wrestling world as well as the sports world. Usually the sport will come up in most of my podcasts. That is my plan anyway. And as you can also tell, I'm doing this solo. This is mainly a solo podcast, but in the future I will hope to have guests on. I've got a few things in the works. I've sent out a few emails. I've tried to make contact with people, so hopefully in the future we'll have some more guests on the podcast. I used to do my old podcast with a guy called Josh Perkins, who is currently a radio presenter for both Apple FM and Sedgemoor FM. He also does some work with BBC Somerset as well. All voluntary, because, that's where you got to start somewhere, and he's doing an excellent job at the moment. He has also got a podcast, so if you guys would like to go listen to that, it's called the Never About Nothing Podcast by Josh Perkins. So hopefully I'll have him on in the future. Because my plan is to kind of have an episode maybe where he could talk about his experience so far being a radio presenter, which fits in well with the whole podcast idea. Hopefully that'll be the plan going forward. So yeah, that is my podcast in a nutshell, guys. I hope you guys really do enjoy. I'm saying guys a lot. I do apologize for the repetition. First episode nerves, first episode quirks, it seems. But that's okay. That's okay. It's only going to get better in the future. So it is actually, what time is it right now? It's actually 7:45 in the evening that I'm recording this. But I just figured, you know what? If I want to start this podcast, it's getting to me now. The tiredness is getting to me now. If I wanted to start this podcast, why not just get straight into it? You know, take it by the balls, as they say, as well as I can. So we're going straight into it. Luckily, I do have a slight script in front of me, which is quite nice. I do have a slight plan, which I planned at work, funny enough, while I had some time to spare. So let's go on to the first topic. First of all, so I'm going to do a few different segments in the podcast. They won't link or bridge together very well at all, because some of these things are so separate from one another. But hopefully soon I can have music overlays to bridge between different connections. I don't know if I'm going to have intro music for this podcast. I hope I do. I hope you guys heard it right at the beginning. But considering I want to get this podcast out as soon as possible, I figured, you know, I'm not going to waste too much time on it. You will also notice sometimes there'll be some, I wouldn't say awkward cuts, but there might be a few editing cuts in here as well, of course, as this isn't going to be a fully unfiltered, unedited podcast, not at all. A lot of the time it will be, because it's a lot of time to take out of my day to do this one. And to be fair, I do have other things to do, but this is something I want to focus on and something I want you guys to enjoy. Also, if you're on my YouTube channel, you can have a look in the bio again, and you can see that you can actually contact me. You can have some discussion. You can send in your questions to me. You can ask me anything you want, and I will try my best to answer them to the best of my ability. You can either go to my Twitter at Alex_LK, as in ELKAY 21. Or you can email me at Lane-Kiel, that is ALANEKIEL @gmail.com, if you would like to ask me any questions or would like to have a discussion with me, which maybe I can bring up in a future podcast. If you guys have some relevant information or something interesting you would like to bring to me, I'll happily have you on the podcast and we can talk about anything you'd like to. I'm happy to have anything going on. As long as you guys are open for discussion, and just remember, obviously, being a podcast, I will express my opinion. Please remember, please respect. I will respect your opinion. Please respect all of my opinions that I do share in the podcast. If you disagree, that's fine. I'm perfectly okay with you disagreeing, because I perfectly understand your opinion. If you'd like to have a discussion about our different opinions, then message me on Twitter or try and get in contact with me through email. I am fully open, fully ready to have any sort of discussion you guys would like. But let's just enjoy it. Let's have fun. Let's try and find positives in what can feel like a negative world sometimes. As that actually moves perfectly into our next segment, which I like to call the quote of the day, or in this case, the quote of the podcast, as I will call it. So let me just find it here. I do have it written down here somewhere once it fully loads up, which it should do. Aha, here we go. So the March 28th podcast quote of the podcast is, "Happiness always looks small while you hold it in your hands, but let it go, and you learn at once how big and precious it is." Maxim Gorky. That's a really, really quite nice quote, that one. I really like that one. It's quite, I wouldn't say elusive. What's the word? It's quite ambiguous. That's the word I was trying to think of. Here's me about to go study English literature, and I couldn't even remember the word ambiguous. Oh dear, showing myself words. Wow, words are an interesting thing. Words are an extremely, extremely interesting thing. The way we can manipulate them, the way we change them, as Maxim Gorky did in that quote right there. He used the idea of happiness and words to bring out this ambiguity within happiness. So he talks about how by letting happiness go, we can see how precious it is. I feel a lot of people, especially in my generation, I say it as if I'm 60 years old, but my generation can learn a lot from that. For example, I do have a girlfriend personally, and I see her a lot less than I used to see my ex-girlfriend, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. But what happened with my ex-girlfriend is that, we almost saw each other too much. So we didn't have that fondness of seeing each other every time. Whereas me and my current girlfriend, I get to appreciate our relationship more, because not only do I not see her as much, but I miss her a lot more, obviously, as most couples would. It's like with anything, as soon as you let go of something, you realize how precious and amazing it is. It's like, for example, your childhood. When going back to my earlier what I said earlier about don't grow up too fast, eventually when you reach adulthood, you're gonna miss and wish you were back as a child again. I know my dad, who I actually work with, funny enough, he'll say he hated school, but he'd always take it back in a heartbeat over being an adult. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's quite nice to hold on to the past, but sometimes you've got to let it go to understand how happy it's made you and that it's made you the person you are. Whereas when I told my girlfriend this quote earlier, she took it a different way. She believed that the reason why she holds on is because because by holding on to that happiness, when you do let it go, you want it back again, which I can understand. Some people would take it that way. Sometimes it's about moving on. Sometimes it is about letting go. But for some people, it's about holding on to what you care about deeply and desperately, which is quite interesting. So it was nice to have another person's take on it. It's nice to have a female take on it as well. I'd like to hear maybe one of you guys, if any males are listening right now, please get in contact with me on how you would handle that quote, on what that makes you think or what that makes you feel. Because I think, obviously, words and emotions go together so well. Obviously, there are some of us who struggle, excuse me, to express our emotion through words, because sometimes maybe we fear to express emotion because we don't want to believe we feel that emotion. Some people feel like they can't express it in words because the emotion is too strong that even words can't describe it. And to be fair, a lot of people are so insecure that they feel that they can't talk to someone about it because they won't understand. Because again, words don't necessarily explain how you feel. That's where people like Van Gogh, sorry. I actually do not know how you pronounce Vincent van Gogh/Gogh's name. Is it Go? Is it Gough? Let me know, guys. I really want to know this. He was exiled, not exiled as such. He was isolated. He was pushed out of society, figuratively, of course. He wasn't literally pushed out of the town he lived in. He lived on a farm, very isolated from everyone else, because most people thought of him as mad. People thought of him as insane, and so they wouldn't go near him. They wouldn't actually talk to him that much at all. He was lonely. He was in love with someone he could never be with. And he didn't express that through words because he didn't really have anyone to talk to except his doctor, who was very fond of him up until the day of his death, whose name I've totally forgotten. And that actually really frustrates me if I've forgotten his name. But the way Van Gogh, instead of telling people how he felt through words and through sounds, he did it through colour. He did it through artistry in his paintings. Starry Night is the best example. Like, some people will look at Starry Night and all they see are these is this type of artistry that is swivels and a bit of dark colour on there. But if you look into it, you can see the emotion not only within the painting, but you can almost see him paint that. You can almost imagine his arm twisting with the paintbrush in that I wouldn't even say anger, I wouldn't even say passion. It was almost as if it was just all of his emotions coming out at once. It was anger, it was passion, it was love, it was every single emotion that he was feeling. Isolation can do that to someone. Because for some of us, when we're lonely, we have to find other ways of dealing with our emotions. A famous poet who I actually studied about last year, once again, I've forgotten his name completely. I need to try and remember, actually. Apologies, I've just... there will be a slight cut there, as I had to remember who the name of the poet was. The poet was called John Donne, who was a early... probably it would have been probably late Renaissance, early 17th century, I believe. Is it early 17th century poet who he wrote so many poems. He had a lot of issues with the government because he was a very controversial poet at that. And the way he would express his heartbreak, which he had a lot of. He was a very desirable man, a very sexually frustrated man, it seemed as well. But that's just an ambiguous take on his poems. He would show his anger and sadness through poetry. If I could find a line from one of his poems right now, I'll try to find it. Hopefully, I can maybe include that in the next podcast episode. But the way he expressed his emotions was through poetry, through rhyme, through ambiguity. So even though he was using words, he wasn't saying these words literally. He was writing these words down, and that's why a lot of people actually. And that's why a lot of these people, unfortunately, very lonely, very depressed people, they're told by therapists to write a journal or to keep a diary, to explain how they feel every day. I know some people personally who have to do this to treat their depression. It's sad. It's extremely sad. But when you read the journal, I remember one of my friends who was put on treatment and was told to make or keep a journal. Sent me a picture one time. I won't show it, obviously. I'm not going to share what it said, obviously, because that's all personal. But they showed me a picture, and it wasn't sad. It was actually quite happy in a way, because this person was finally letting out their emotion in the best way they could. They couldn't physically say these words, but they were able to write it. And I think that's the amazingness of literature, which is another reason why I'm going off to study it, because, movies, TV shows, books, they all came from words that we couldn't use literally or we couldn't say. These things had to be written down. You can't make a movie without a script. And you can't make a script by saying something. You have to make a script by writing it down. It's why we remember things. History. We would have no history if it wasn't for words on a page. We wouldn't know anything about it. Like, fair enough, you can be told these things, but to have actual proof of writings from the likes of Homer, who wrote the Odyssey, and Socrates is arguably the greatest philosopher of all time. We have his journals, his writing. Percy Fawcett, is it? I believe it's the guy who went to discover parts of the Amazon because no one else would. Is it Percy Fawcett? I do apologize if I got his name completely wrong there. But I was listening to a podcast by a guy called Dan Snow, and amazing podcast, absolutely incredible. If you guys are history buffs or want to get into history or want to learn more about the world, honestly, please listen to Dan Snow's history here. It is incredible. And he did an episode, an older episode. I think might have been 2017, maybe early 2018. I could be wrong, but I do apologize. But if you do go and listen to the one about Percy Fawcett, because it's an incredible, incredible story about this guy who, again, was isolated and wanted to prove people wrong. He was a World War I soldier who watched so many young men run and walk to their death because they were told to. And so he almost had an anger towards humanity. At least that's my take on it. So he wanted to prove the disbelievers wrong, the non-believers wrong. And his granddaughter, I believe it is, kept all of his journals from all of his discoveries, from him going to the Amazon and everything. Unfortunately, he did go missing in the Amazon, and we have ideas of where he went missing, but obviously there's no foolproof evidence of where he lays or anything like that, unfortunately. But we do have his journals, and it's proof like that shows that the world is more than it seems, of course. And I think that's the amazingness of words, and that is exactly why I want to go and study literature, because I want to learn historic poetry. I want to learn historic literature, because I'm a bit of a history buff myself. I don't know necessarily the most about history, but I wish I did. And I love learning about the history of my life, of the world, of everything. I think that's the incredible thing about it. And speaking of history, we can now move on to our next subject, where just a few fun facts for the podcast. So let me just get these up real quick, because I've got these down somewhere as well. So also, if you guys want to see this, I use an app called Today in History. It's a really fun app. You can find out events, deaths, births from any date, and it will take you through the years. and show you all the different events that have happened since the start of time, since literally the start of time. So a few events that have gone down on March the 28th in history. We actually had the start of technically what I'd call the start of the Thatcher movement, which is obviously a big deal in the UK. It was when British House of Commons passes a vote of no confidence against James Callaghan, and so which forced a general election to have to be made, which then brought Margaret Thatcher into power. So that's one fun fact. Also another one, in 1970 on this day, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake strikes western Turkey, which killed over 1,000 people and injured even more, which is a very sad one. And there was another one as well, I believe in 2005, yeah, here it is, in 2005 in Indonesia, I believe, magnitude of 8.7, which is the fourth strongest earthquake since 65. That is insane. And to think that was only 14 years ago. Wow, that is amazing. And unfortunately, we may get much more worse earthquakes in the future as well, which obviously isn't great, but it's natural. That is the way the world works, unfortunately. And my two other interesting facts of the day. So on March 28th in 1910, I believe it is, 1910. Let me just go and check that real quick. Is it 1910? I believe it is 1910. Yeah, so 1910, I believe it's Henri Faber. Could be Henry, but I believe it's Henri. Henri Faber becomes the first person to fly a seaplane. The seaplane was called the Faber Hydraven. After taking off from a water runway near Martigues, I apologise, I don't know how to pronounce that place, in France. So that is one of the facts. And the other fact, I believe, is in 1930. This is my favourite one, so I saved this one till last. On this day in 1930, Constantinople, which is one of my favourite ever names for a city, became Istanbul. And that is the fact, or facts, of the podcast. So, some interesting facts there. An interesting time history is. Very, very, very interesting. So now moving on into the more mainstream topics now. That was my nice little sort of personal sort of part of the episode, but now we move on to something a bit more mainstream, a bit more serious, a bit more depressing, unfortunately. Recently this week, a video dropped of a very famous singer known as Cardi B. She a video came out recently, or was leaked anyway, of her admitting to drugging and robbing men that she had had sex with, which is incredibly insane, to say the least. Wow, I couldn't quite believe what to think when I first saw this, to be honest. It's God, the world. Wow. But anyway, she came out and said that she did what she had to do to survive. And another quote is that I had very limited options. Right. So obviously a very controversial topic. I've seen many people have many opinions on this one. Obviously it's caused a lot of feminism to be brought out here. A lot of sexism has had to come out in the last week as well on Twitter. Twitter can be a very, very dark place, especially during moments like this. So I don't really have a full opinion on this, mainly because I don't want to have an opinion on this, because it is a screwed up situation. It's a situation that none of us want to be in. The fact that Cardi felt like she had to do this is insane. I mean, it shows the desperation that some people go through in their lives, where they feel that the way to survive is by having sexual intercourse with someone to then drug them and rob them. I mean, that's desperation at its finest. And obviously she's done very well for herself. Personally not a fan of her music, but that's mainly because I don't mind hip hop, but it's not my favourite genre. So it's not that I don't respect her, even though she has said many controversial things. I respect how well she's done for herself and what she's done for the business. I don't think she's the best role model, not at all. She's came out and said a lot of controversial things in the last year or so. Probably more than that, actually. Her and Nicki Minaj have said a lot of very controversial things. We won't get into that. We're sticking on this topic. Very, very dark topic to say the least. But I did see one tweet which was quite interesting. It was a woman. It was an American woman who was clearly a Cardi B fan, and she came out and said that, yeah, but at least, but they did condone to having sex with her. Yes, she didn't rape these men. That is agreed. She did not rape these men, but neither did Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby did not necessarily, there are arguments that he did, of course. I don't know the full story of Bill Cosby, but from what I know, he would have sex with women, he would then drug them, and then do as he pleased, or rob them, or anything like that. He then went to jail because of it. I believe he went to jail. Like I said, I don't know the Bill Cosby story fully. All I know is that he'd had sex with women, and he drugged them, etc., etc. So the woman, the Cardi B fan, was fully correct. She did not rape these men. There was complete condonacy on both sides. They were both happy to have sex. However, they did not condone to being drugged and then robbed. No one's going to condone to that unless they're into that kind of. That would be extreme BDSM in my mind. But that is not the topic at hand right now. The topic at hand is the fact that Cardi B did this to men who were arguably very innocent. Now, obviously, of course, they may not have been. Of course, they might not have been innocent at all. But some of these men may have, they may have been working 10-hour shifts, not getting paid a huge amount at the local store or anything like that. And she would have sex with these men because they were easy targets, and would then drug them, then take what they had left, take their day's earnings from them. And of course, I'm not saying that they were any better off than her or anything like that. Of course, I'm not saying she was any better off than them. But what I'm saying is it's still wrong either way. And there are a lot of people who are coming out and saying that she should be jailed for this, she should be arrested, sentenced for life, this sort of thing. For me, I'm not going to say whether someone should be in jail or not, unless, of course, they've murdered someone, completely different. But it's the fact that she has come out and admitted it. Fair enough, she's defending herself, but the fact that she has come out and admitted it, you could argue, yeah, maybe she should be going to jail for this. I mean, it's not at all ethically correct. It's not at all lawful. It's not law abiding. It's nothing like that. It's completely wrong. It is sexual. I don't know if it comes under sexual assault. It must be sexual harassment in some way. She drugged and robbed. I mean, she robbed. She straight up admitted that she would rob these people, and and mentally and emotionally she may have faced the consequences, but lawfully she hasn't. So just putting it out there, guys. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know on Twitter. Let me know via email. Do you guys think that Cardi B is in the right for this? Do you think she's in the wrong? Do you think she should be arrested? Do you think she should be exonerated? What do you guys think about this situation? Which now moves into the next subject, which is a bit lighter, a much lighter topic. We go into Article 13. Yeah. So, for any of you guys that don't know what Article 13 is, Article 13 is a new European law that they do believe is going to get passed, but won't fully go through for another 2 years, kind of like what's happening with Brexit, even though that feels like it's gone on for a decade now. So Article 13 is basically a law that says it's a copywriting law where you can only share what is yours. So for example, if you're in the EU or something and you want to share a meme or a GIF, it is arguable that you could get fined, you could get done, you get prosecuted for sharing a meme on the internet, which is insane. And it does mean that outside of the EU, you cannot share content with people inside the EU, and people inside the EU cannot share content with people outside the EU. It's an incredibly insane law, which obviously YouTube and YouTube creators and a lot of media creators, especially worldwide and European, are very much against right now. I believe there is a vote at the end of next month, if I'm correct, for people to vote whether they're for this or against this law. So there is a big possibility that this law will get stopped. But at this point, Parliament have all agreed, or government have all agreed to this law. Now, obviously, for someone like me, who is recording a podcast to anyone around the world to listen to, this is a pretty big deal to me as well. I mean, I like a lot of people's content from YouTube. You know, I've watched PewDiePie, I've watched Jacksepticeye, of course, and I'm trying to think if there's another few European YouTubers I do listen to, or watch, should I say, that I want to carry on watching and listening to their media. Because I enjoy it. It's something I like to do in my spare time when it takes me away from the real world for a bit. And that's a big deal, because to a lot of viewers, these are their idols. Like, these are people they look up to. Like, obviously, one major group on YouTube are called the Sidemen. And so many people around the world, especially in Europe and Middle East, you know, they look up to these guys. People who are isolated and more depressed, you know, the messages that these YouTubers get, because they help people get through, they get a bad stick, YouTube creators, for being lazy and not working hard, not having proper jobs, sort of thing. But they do work hard, you know, and they give something for people to look up to. They give something for people to enjoy, especially for people who are struggling. You know, they use YouTube as a way to escape their real lives, and that is something that Article 13 could ruin. But that's all I'm going to say about that one. Again, I want to know what you guys feel about, how you guys feel about Article 13. Let me know what you think. Get in contact with me. Let's discuss it. If you guys have any questions, of course, they will be used in future episodes, of course. So if you guys have any questions you want me to answer, or for me to just ask, not even answer, then please let me know. So that's Article 13. Moving on to something a bit more different. I got this thing today, which I've seen advertised for a little while now, and oh my goodness, do I love it. It's called The Economist. It's incredible. I believe it's British. I do believe it is a British app or thing or whatever, and I've subscribed to it, and I need to listen to it. All I've done is read the articles within it so far, but I haven't actually listened to the audio from this week's Economist, and it's incredible. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love what I've read so far. It keeps me up to date with everything. It's non-biased. It can be a little bit biased at times, but it's not too biased, which is quite nice. And there was one thing I saw today. I'll see if I can find it now, actually. They do a thing called Cow's Cartoon, or KAL's Cartoon, which is quite interesting. And this also moves into another subject which happened recently, which was the unfortunate New Zealand Christchurch shooting. Extremely sad. Rest in peace to those who were unfortunately killed in the tragic events. And I actually didn't know this. I found this out today, but the shooter, I will not name his name. That is not happening. But the shooter on his gun had the name of a young girl who was killed by a jihadist, I believe. And it does show the fact that jihad and white supremacists are really becoming more of the forefront in nowadays age. And obviously in America it doesn't help when you do have a white supremacist in charge, or at least, you know, Trump does come across very much as white supremacist, and you know, it has led to a lot more white supremacists being more open about being white supremacists. I mean, the guy who did the Christchurch shooting has even admitted that he looks up to Donald Trump and believes that he believes that he is the chosen one to allow true, real, 100% humans, also known as white people in the supremacist's case, to prosper above the non-100% humans, like Muslims, in their opinion. Obviously, for me, I do not condone this at all. I'm very open to everything. I'm open to any gender, any sexuality, any religion, any race. I will hold my hands out in open arms and welcome them into my life, into my spiritual world, into my circle. But the Cow's Cartoon that I saw today was of the New Zealand president. I can't remember her name, but she is an amazing, incredible woman. And it was the reaction to a mass shooting in New Zealand, and it's a cartoon, a very exaggerated cartoon, of course, of her saying, "We need to rein in guns," spelt REIN. And it's her standing at the podium with the New Zealand flag, which is actually pointing downwards, which I read into as being the fact that they're on a downward spiral right now. They're on a downwards loop with everything happening, but they're still there. They're still hanging in there. They're still staying strong, and they'll bring peace back into New Zealand. They'll bring normality back into New Zealand. And then on the other side of the cartoon, it says in the United States, and it's a guy with an umbrella which says NRA on it, which says we need to rein in guns, spell RAIN, and it has lots of pistols and rifles and grenades on the floor, and more guns coming from the heavens, as if it's literally raining guns. And that was an interesting, really obviously controversial cartoon, but it does show you something about how the world feels about the rest of the world, basically. Sorry, I'm just going to take a quick swig of my drink. Oh, because I did actually go and make one a few minutes back. And it shows exactly how people feel about America. And I do feel sorry for a lot of people in America who are very much against guns, who are against racism, who are against hunting, who are against prejudice, anything like that, because they are surrounded and accused of being like every other American. Now, don't get me wrong, I will never generalize someone. If I see someone who's a Muslim, if I see someone who's white, if I see someone who's black, if I see someone who's Asian, Mexican, South American, European, American, you name it, I will not generalize them to any sort of stereotype, because it's unfair. It is so unfair. I would hate it if someone saw me, a middle-class white guy, straight, look at me and think he's going to be an arrogant, up his ass, only cares about money and himself sort of thing. I don't want people to think that of me. I don't want people to think that of me at all. I'm so open to everything and happy with myself that I want to spread the happiness with everyone else. I want the world to be a happy place. I want the world to be a more spiritual place, because I'm agnostic. I will be open to that. I'm agnostic, but I'm open to religions, of course. But I am spiritual. I do believe that there is this one spiritual force that can bring humanity together. I don't think it will ever happen, because it's never happened. The world has always been war-ridden. There's always been conflict. There's always been issues in the world. And I don't think that will ever get sorted. At least maybe not until, we have alien races, if possible, or we have if one day we do find out that there is a god or many gods, I think that'll be the day where we as humans will become one big collective. But for now, I do believe in spirituality, and I do believe there is this one big spiritual force, but I don't believe it will ever bring humanity together, which is sad, but at least in my mind I have something to hang on to, which a lot of people don't. A lot of people just see the world as this conflicted mess, which it is, but you got to find the beauty in it, which is what we do with words. Going back to the start of the podcast, we're talking about what we do with words to express emotion, express conflict, and I think that's the best way to do it. So moving into a much more lighter situation, today, some big news today. We're going into the sports section now. Well, hey, so this will be a lot of you guys' favourite part, hopefully. Or maybe worst part. This could be your actual worst part of the podcast, but hopefully your favourite. So today, it was announced that Manchester United have signed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to a permanent 3-year deal, which will keep him with the club until 2022, I believe, which means that they can now start preparing for the future. They start preparing for the summer, they start bringing in players that they want to bring in, which is, exactly what United needed after a lot of uncertainty. I believe it was the right decision. By the way, I'm actually a Reading fan, in case you're wondering, so I can have an opinion on the Premier League and not be biased towards any team or other, because I support a championship club. But I do believe United have made the right decision here. I believe Solskjaer has taken them from 6th place, 15 points off 4th, to now 5th place, 2 points off 4th, which is incredible. They're on 58 points now with 8 games to go, I believe. I mean, it's a tough ask. Don't get me wrong, it is a tough ask to make that top 4, especially with how they have played this season, and the teams above them have probably played overall a lot better this season. But I believe it is possible for United. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about this. I'm not surprised that Solskjaer has taken over permanently. He'll want to bring in some top players next season. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a striker come into United next season, even though they have got Lukaku, Rashford, Martial, Lingard, etc. I think they do need some more goal scoring options, and I believe that they'll do that through another striker. I think Solskjaer will try and find the next him in a way. Which is great news for United, of course, and I think they will definitely be pushing for a top 3 position next season with the players that they have. So, moving on to the other sport topic. It is actually the opening day for the Major League Baseball 2019 season. How freaking exciting is that, guys? Obviously, for you non-Americans, you may not support it as much. Unless you're like me, you're a British guy who can appreciate sports around the world, which I hope you guys do. And I don't actually know, and I believe, yes, we have. So I am actually a Chicago Cubs fan. And we have actually kicked off, I believe, right now. So obviously you guys will know what the final score is. But obviously for me, I've just got to wait and see what happens towards the end. So Chicago Cubs are currently 0-0 and we're in the bottom of the first. We're actually, I believe, we're away to the Texas Rangers right now. So really, really exciting times now that Major League Baseball is back. I do believe the favourites to win the World Series this season are the Yankees and the Astros. At least that's from one report I saw. And I do believe that the Yankees could do it this season. I think they will get back to greatness like they used to be under the likes of Babe Ruth and players like that. So I do believe that the Yankees will win the World Series this season. Of course, I'll be supporting my Cubbies, but I do believe that the Yankees will finally do it. Though I do believe the Astros will have a huge, huge chance as well. They had such a good season last season. Probably underperformed a lot in the playoffs. But I feel they probably had the pressure get to them a little bit. So we could get an Astros-Yankees playoff match, though, which will probably decide a lot at the end of the season. But anyway, guys, I really hope you have enjoyed listening to the podcast. Next time I may have a guest with me. We will see. If not, then it'll be another one of these sort of things again. If you guys want to make contact with me or get in touch with me, please follow my Twitter at Alex_LK21, or you can email me at alanekill@gmail.com. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please smash the like button below. Subscribe if you're new. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And if you listen on Podbean, please follow me on there as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I will be back next week for the same again. Love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.